The sky was dark and filled with smoke. The final battle in space had just ended. Among the broken ships and floating metal, one small escape pod burned through the clouds of an unknown planet. Inside that pod, a human soldier was barely alive. His name was David. His armor was cracked, and blood ran down his face. He didn't know where he was, only that he was falling. And then, everything went black. The pod crashed in the middle of a green forest. Trees shook and animals ran away. The fire from the pod slowly died, leaving silence behind. Tiny eyes peeked from behind the trees. They were not human. They were small, strange creatures with large, glowing eyes. No taller than a human's knee, they had soft skin, colorful ears, and walked quietly like whispers. They were the Yalari. They lived peacefully, hiding from the rest of the galaxy. But now, a giant had fallen from the sky. The Yalari chief, an old creature with silver fur. He looked at the pod and raised a small stick. "Be careful," he said. "It could be one of the hunters." But when they opened the pod, they saw David, bleeding and unconscious. He didn't look like the hunters. He looked different, wounded, weak, and human. "He's a sky being," one Yalari whispered. "But he saved no weapon." "He is broken," another said. Still, the chief made a strange decision. "Take him to the healing grove," he ordered. "We will save him." The Yalari placed tiny healing stones on David's wounds. They sang soft songs to call the energy of the forest. Slowly, the human's wounds closed. His breathing became steady after 3 days. David opened his eyes. At first, he thought he was dreaming. Tiny creatures were walking around him. Glowing flowers hung from trees, and soft lights floated in the air. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his shoulder. One Yalari ran to get the chief. When the chief arrived, he bowed with respect. "Welcome, Sky Guardian," he said. David blinked. "Sky? What?" The chief smiled. "You came from the stars, and we saved you." David looked around, confused. Then he remembered his ship. The crash, the war. He tried to stand, but the chief raised a hand. "Rest now," he said. "Your body is still weak." David finally spoke. "Where am I?" The chief replied, "This world is called Alira. We are the Yalari." David took a deep breath. He looked at these small beings, their soft eyes, their quiet voices. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like children playing dress-up. But he could feel something heavy in the air. Fear. What happened here? David asked. The chief's smile faded. "The hunters came from the stars," he said. "They tried to take our land, burn our forests, and cage our people." David's hands clenched into fists. He had seen this before too many times. The strong crushing the weak. He couldn't allow that again. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the forest. The Yalari froze. The chief turned pale. "They're back," he whispered. "One of their scouts must have returned." David stood up. "Despite the pain, where is it?" he asked. The chief pointed toward the edge of the forest. David didn't wait. He picked up a broken metal rod from the crash and began walking. "Wait, you are injured," one Yalari shouted. But David kept going. He reached a clearing where a huge creature with black armor and red eyes was sniffing the ground. It was looking for something or someone. It turned, and its eyes locked onto David. The beast roared and charged. David didn't run. He raised the metal rod and dodged the first strike. He rolled under the creature and slammed the rod into its side. Sparks flew. The beast screamed, throwing David across the field. He hit a rock and coughed up blood, but he got back up. He charged again, using speed instead of strength. He climbed onto the creature's back and jammed the rod into its neck. With a final cry, the beast fell. David collapsed beside it, breathing hard. The Yalari slowly came out of the trees. They looked at the human who fought a monster with nothing but scrap and courage. They bowed to him. The chief said, "You are truly a guardian." David tried to smile, but his vision blurred. He passed out again. This time, not from wounds, but from exhaustion, and as the stars appeared in the night sky, The Yalari carried their new protector to the healing grove again. Their tiny voices whispered, maybe ... The sky has sent us hope. David woke to the smell of warm fruit and glowing flowers. Sunlight touched his face through leaves that shimmered like glass. Birds made of feathers and light flew above him. It felt like a dream until he heard the voice. Wake up, giant, the voice said. Your ceremony starts soon. David blinked. Standing on his chest was a tiny creature, no bigger than his hand. She had silver blue skin, leaf-like hair, and a sharp look in her glowing eyes. Ceremony? He asked, confused. What ceremony? She jumped down and smiled. I'm Lily, the chief's daughter, she said, and apparently your gift. David sat up fast, wincing from the pain in his shoulder. My what? He asked, shocked. Lily crossed her arms. Gift, reward, bride, take your pick. David blinked again. Bride? She nodded. Yes, congratulations. You're now the husband of a tiny alien princess. David looked around, half expecting hidden cameras. But this wasn't a joke. Yalari were decorating the trees, lighting up the paths with blue fireflies. Music floated in the air, made from wind and strings of crystal. It was a celebration, but David was not celebrating. He stood up slowly. Listen. I'm grateful for the healing, but I'm not. Lily interrupted. Relax, giant, it's symbolic. You saved us, and in Yalari tradition, we honor our heroes with something valuable. David raised an eyebrow. And your people thought a tiny wife was the best idea? She smirked. Don't flatter yourself, I volunteered. David was speechless. Lily turned serious. You don't understand, we've never been protected before. You fought for us, bled for us, and that means something here, before. David could respond. Drums echoed from the heart of the forest. The chief entered the clearing, followed by dozens of Yalari. All eyes were on David. The chief raised his staff. Sky Guardian, he said. You faced death to save our lives. We offer you the highest honor, the bond of family. He looked at Lily, then back at David. In our way, this bond is not just marriage, it is trust, loyalty, and protection. David felt the pressure. He didn't want to insult them, but this was all too strange. He bent down and whispered to Lily, Is there a way out of this without starting another war? Lily grinned. Just go with it, you'll see. The ceremony began. A circle of light formed around them. The forest hummed with energy. Tiny flowers opened all at once, releasing glowing pollen into the air. David placed a single finger over Lily's hand. It was enough to seal the bond. The Yalari cheered. Lily rolled her eyes and whispered, Well, husband, now what? David sighed. Now I find a way to survive this madness. Later that night, David sat near the fire. Yalari children played nearby. Pretending to be warriors, he stared into the flames, thinking he had fought in wars, traveled through galaxies, and lost everything. Now he was bonded to a tiny alien and living in a glowing jungle. Was this peace? Or just another kind of battle? Lily joined him, carrying a cup of bright blue liquid. You're thinking too much, she said, handing it to him. David took a sip. It tasted like fire and honey. He asked, Why did you really volunteer? She looked at the sky. Because we need you, she said. Not just as a warrior, but as a reminder that even giants can care. David didn't know what to say before he could answer. A strange noise echoed from the distance. Low, deep, and not natural. David stood up, hand reaching for the metal rod he now kept beside him. Lily's face turned pale. They're back, she whispered. The hunters never gave up. In the darkness beyond the trees, red lights flickered like eyes. David narrowed his gaze. No more hiding, he said. If they want a fight, they've got one. And just like that, the ceremony of peace became the start of war. The jungle was silent, too silent. No birds sang, no winds moved, and even the leaves stopped dancing. David stood at the edge of the glowing forest. His fingers tightened around the scrap metal rod he had turned into a weapon. Beside him, Lily Crouched on a branch, her eyes glowing softly in the dark, they both stared into the distance, where red sparks blinked between the trees. Not fireflies, not stars, but scanners, and scanners meant only one thing. They found us. Lily whispered. Far behind them, the Yalari village was asleep. Children dreamed under woven light blankets. Elders hummed to the forest roots. None of them knew that death was moving closer. David turned to Lily. How fast can we evacuate the village? She shook her head. We have nowhere else to go. David didn't answer, but deep inside, something old and cold awoke the soldier inside him. The one who had buried friends, fought monsters, and learned how to turn fear into fire that night. David didn't sleep. He walked through the village, studying every corner, every tool, every weak point. He saw possibilities trees that could become towers, vines that could become traps. He saw survivors, not victims, and he made a decision. We make a stand, he told the chief. The chief looked at him with tired eyes. We are peaceful people. Guardian, David nodded. So were we once, but peace without defense is only waiting for ruin. The next morning, the training began. It was chaos at first. Tiny Yalari trying to hold pebble-sized shields, others tripping over their own weapons. David almost laughed, but he didn't. Instead, he taught how to move, how to hide, how to strike with speed instead of size. Lily joined him, and to David's surprise, she was quick, clever, and sharper than most human cadets. He had trained. By the third day, something had changed. The Yalari were not just small creatures anymore. They were becoming defenders. While the training went on, Lily took David to a hidden chamber under the village. It was dark and full of dust. Inside, ancient tech pulsed with weak blue light. This is Yalari core tech, Lily said, brushing off a metal console. Long ago, we were inventors and explorers, but when the galaxy turned violent, we hid all of it. David studied the machine. It looked like a fusion of nature and science alive. Yet mechanical. What does it do? He asked. Lily pressed a glowing button, and a small metal sphere floated out of the core. It opened with a soft click, revealing a swarm of tiny drones. They confuse enemy sensors, disrupt communication, and sting hard. Lily grinned. I call them wasps, David smiled. For the first time in days, you're full of surprises, he said. Lily shrugged. I was a thinker before I was a wife. But just as they were preparing the defenses, something went wrong. One of the Yalari named Azaran, a quiet builder, went missing. Later that night, David found a strange device near the village wall. It was a tracker, old but still active, and it had one message blinking in alien code. Target found. Prepare for harvest. David's face darkened. We have a traitor, he said. Chief lowered his head. No one here would, David interrupted. Someone already did. They knew the attack would come, and soon. David stood in the center of the village and spoke. I won't lie, he said. We may not win. But if we fight smart, if we fight together, we can survive. Lily stepped beside him, her small hand resting on his boot. And if we fall, she said, let's make sure the stars remember we didn't fall silent. And from the treetops far above the village, glowing red eyes watched, cold, hungry, and ready. The hunters had returned, and this time, the jungle would burn. At sunrise, the forest glowed gold, but under that beauty, war was breathing. The trees were no longer silent. They whispered plans, carried signals, and waited for the first scream. David stood on a wooden platform above the Yalari village. Beneath him, tiny soldiers moved in lines. They wore leaf-woven armor, carried spears made from crystal thorns. Some had mini slingshots, others tiny firebombs and seed pods. It looked like a children's play, but this wasn't a game. This was a tiny army, and they were ready to fight giants. Lily paced beside him, holding a tablet made from bark and wires. We have 35 trained, she said. And 15 still learning, David nodded. Then we have 35.5 warriors, Lily smiled. Don't underestimate the half. They're feisty. He watched as a group of Yalari climbed inside hollowed-out nuts. The nuts rolled forward, turned and locked in place, miniature tanks. Another squad wore mossy cloaks and vanished into the grass. Stealth scouts. It was crazy. It was genius. They had built all of it in 3 days. From nothing but trash, tools, and imagination, David walked through the village, checking traps and tech. He passed a line of young Yalari learning how to throw sticky bombs. One of them threw too hard and got stuck to a tree. David pulled him off gently. "Next time," he said, "aim at the enemy, not yourself." In the workshop, Lily showed him a new creation, a wrist device that let him control the drone swarm with a flick of his fingers. She called it the wasp nest. "Push here," she said, "and they scatter, blind the enemy, and return." David tested it, and the drones flew like fireflies. With attitude, it was brilliant, but something still bothered him. The tracker, the traitor. He didn't say it aloud, but he had a feeling the betrayal wasn't over yet. That night, the wind changed. It smelled like oil, metal, and death. David climbed a watchtower made from vines and wood. In the distance, he saw shadows moving through the trees. Too many. Too fast. The hunters were coming. He rushed down, sounded the alert. Drums made from hollow stones echoed through the village. Yalari warriors grabbed their weapons and took positions. Tiny hearts beat like war drums. David turned to Lily. "Ready?" he asked. She tightened her gloves. "Born ready." The jungle lit up with red lasers as the hunters opened fire, but the Yalari didn't run. They vanished, melted into the trees, climbed, rolled, and scattered. David watched in awe as traps triggered, nets flew, bombs burst, and hidden pits opened. One hunter stepped into a clearing and was hit by 10 tiny spears at once. David joined the fight. He charged, shield raised, deflecting blasts. He grabbed one hunter by the arm and slammed him into a tree. The wasp drones flew in, confusing the others. It was chaos, but it was working. Then it happened, a massive explosion. Near the eastern edge of the village, David ran to the smoke. There, in the rubble, stood Zoran, the missing Yalari. He had called them again, betrayed them again. David raised his weapon, but Siren screamed, "Wait!" "I didn't have a choice." Lily arrived, her voice shaking. "You sold us to slavers." She said, "You chose." But before anyone could speak again, a hunter sniped Siren from above. His body fell silently. Even betrayal wasn't safe anymore. The hunters kept coming, but now so did the Yalari's fury. David shouted, "Now!" Lily pressed a button, and the final trap was unleashed. A wave of vines, machines, and drones surged through the jungle. The ground moved, the trees attacked, and the tiny army roared. By dawn, it was over. Smoke covered the battlefield. The hunters had fallen back, leaving behind weapons, blood, and silence. David sat on a rock, exhausted. Lily sat beside him, wiping dust from her face. "You're bleeding," she said. David smiled weakly. "Only a little," she laughed. "You big softy." Then her face turned serious. "We lost many," she said, "but we didn't lose ourselves." And for the first time in his life, David felt something stronger than survival. He felt pride. The Yalari weren't tiny victims anymore. They were warriors. They were his army, and they had just won the first battle. The sky was no longer blue. It burned. Red clouds rolled in like smoke made of fury. Ash rained from above, and thunder cracked with no lightning. It was not weather, it was war. David stood in the ruins of the outer wall, his armor scorched, his face streaked with blood and sweat. Beside him, Lily checked her device. "They're regrouping," she said. "That wasn't the full wave." David didn't speak. He stared at the horizon, where shadows gathered again, stronger, larger, angrier. The first battle was just the opening scream. Now came the storm. Villagers cried as they buried their fallen. Tiny hands dug graves in soft earth. One child held a broken toy made by Sarin, the traitor who died too soon to explain. Lily's voice shook as she spoke to the people. "We are small, yes," she said, "but our spirit is not. We fight because we love, not because we hate." And the Yalari raised their fists to the sky, but David could see the fear behind. Their courage, they needed more than hope. They needed time, but time had run out. At night, the second wave hit. Louder, faster, crueler. A wall of flame ripped through the eastern side of the village. Screaming metal monsters walked on 6 legs, shooting plasma from their backs. Hunter soldiers dropped from ships like dark angels of death. The Yalari scattered, but they were ready. David roared as he charged into the fire, shield up, drones buzzing around him like angry sparks. He slammed into the nearest hunter, knocking it down with pure force. For a lira. The Yalari shouted, throwing bombs and vines. Lily led the second unit, guiding her people with sharp orders. She activated the old storm towers, machines built by her ancestors. Lightning speared down from the sky, tearing ships in half. The jungle became a storm itself. The trees fought back, the roots grabbed feet. The leaves cut skin. Nature was on fire, but it was not helpless. In the chaos, the chief was hit. A burning beam struck him in the chest. He fell to his knees, gasping. David ran to him, cradling his small body in his hands. "I'm sorry," the chief whispered. "I was too old to change, but you gave us teeth." With his final breath, he touched David's forehead and said, "Protect my daughter." Then he was gone. Lily arrived too late. She fell to her knees beside them. Silent, tears ran down her cheeks, glowing like stars in the smoke. David touched her shoulder. He gave his last breath for this village. He said, "Now we give everything." With the chief gone, Lily stood as the new leader. Her voice became steel. "All units, fall back to the inner ring." She shouted, "We light the sky now." David looked confused. "What's the inner ring?" he asked. She pointed to the center of the village. A glowing circle of blue fire. "Hidden until now, it's the last defense," Lily said. "It will cost everything, but it will stop them." David hesitated. "You'll die," he said. She looked at him with fire in her eyes. Better to die standing with purpose than to live hiding in fear. But David had one more plan. He ran to the shipwreck, his old escape pod, broken but not dead. Inside, he connected Lily's tech to the ship's core. He linked the drones, the storm towers, the inner ring all into one massive trigger. He whispered to the machine, "Give me one last miracle." Then he ran back. The hunters were inside the village now, burning homes, capturing Yalari. David climbed the tower, raised the wasp nest device. He pressed the final button. Everything went still. For 1 second, silence. Then the sky screamed. Blue fire shot into the air. Drones exploded like fireworks. Storm towers roared. A shockwave tore through the village, knocking the hunters back. The inner ring lit up and created a pulse like a heartbeat that pushed evil away. The ground cracked, trees fell, and the air burned clean. When it ended, only smoke remained. David lay on the ground, unconscious. Lily crawled to him, weak, bleeding. She placed her tiny hand on his chest. "Wake up," she whispered. "I need you to see what we saved." And through the broken trees, as the sun finally rose again, the Yalari began to rise, not just survivors, not just warriors, but a people reborn through fire. The battle was over. But the silence that followed felt heavier than war. Ash floated in the air like falling snow. Trees stood broken. Smoke curled from burned homes. No cheering, no music, no loud victory cries. Just breathing, tired and slow, and the whisper of names of the ones they lost. David opened his eyes beneath a half-burned tree. His body ached, his armor was cracked, but he was alive. Lily sat beside him, her face bruised, her hair dusted with ash. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at the horizon, where the jungle once danced in green. Now it stood in silence, half shadow, half smoke. "You did it," she finally said. David sat up slowly. "We did it." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "My father would have called this a beginning," she said. Over the next days, the Yalari rebuilt their homes. Tiny hands carried big hope. The children who once feared shadows now helped carve symbols of light into the new walls. David taught them how to build stronger shields, better defenses. He trained, repaired, and helped, but his eyes often turned to the stars. One evening, Lily found him alone, standing on a cliff above the village. He stared at the sky like he was searching for something. "Are you leaving?" she asked. David didn't answer at first. Then he nodded. "There's a universe out there still burning," he said, "and others like you who need someone to stand beside them." Lily lowered her head. "I thought maybe this could be your home now." David turned to her, knelt so they were eye level. "It is," he said softly, "but I don't belong to one world anymore. I belong to anyone who can't fight back." She didn't argue. She knew he was right. He was never meant to stay. He was a storm passing through, one that cleared the skies so others could see the stars again. That night, the Yalari held a farewell feast. No fireworks, just soft lights and peaceful songs. David walked through the crowd, bowing to elders, hugging children. They called him Star-Blooded, Sky Guardian, Friend of Flame. But Lily simply called him David. At the edge of the village, she gave him a seed, glowing faintly with blue light. "What's this?" he asked. "It's a soul seed," she said. "If you plant it on another world, and if it grows, we'll know where you are. And someday, we'll come find you." David held the seed tightly. A promise, small but powerful. He stepped inside the old escape pod, now repaired with Yalari tech and spirit. The engines hummed. Lights blinked to life. Lily stood outside, watching. He looked at her one last time. No words, just a nod. A warrior's goodbye. The ship rose through the trees, flew past the clouds, and vanished into the stars. Lily stood still for a long time. Then she turned to her people. "I'm no longer a princess," she said. "I am chief now, and we are no longer hiding." From that moment on, the Yalari changed. They rebuilt not just their homes, but their future. They opened the old vaults of knowledge, studied the galaxy, mapped stars. They trained. They created, and they remembered the human who reminded them they were never small. Years passed. On a quiet moon near the edge of a forgotten system, a small plant grew. Its leaves glowed blue. Its roots reached deep, and far above, a Yalari scout ship picked up the signal. Lily, now older and stronger, smiled when she saw the light. "He kept the promise," she whispered. "Now it's our turn." She stepped into her ship behind her followed a new generation, warriors, engineers, dreamers, all once tiny, now rising. Because one human had seen them not as weak, but as worth fighting for. The stars had changed, galaxies had spun, suns had died, and new worlds were born. But the name David still echoed, not as a soldier, not as a wanderer, but as the human who made the tiny roar. On the deep side of space, far beyond charted maps, a signal blinked. It was small, ancient, steady, just a pulse, one that whispered, "I am still here." Lily stood at the bridge of her flagship, not a princess, not just a chief. She was now High Voice of the Yalari Union, leader of 9 planets and protector of the weak. Her armor shimmered with silver and stardust. Her voice had guided fleets, but her heart still remembered one name. "Lock onto the signal," she said. Her crew nodded. They had searched for years. Now the seed had bloomed. The promise had called them home. They arrived on a barren moon, lifeless, rocky, forgotten except for one thing. In the center of a cracked valley stood a green tree, glowing softly with blue leaves. Beneath it, an old camp, a broken flag, and a worn-out beacon still blinking. But no sign of David. Lily walked through the camp slowly, touching old tools, scanning logs. She read his notes. How he'd helped settlers, protected a mining crew, stopped a raider attack. He had been here. He had made this place safe then. "Nothing. Do you think he's gone?" one soldier asked. Lily looked up at the stars. "No," she said. "He doesn't vanish." Just then, a new signal lit up much stronger from a nearby system. A distress call, pirate attack, civilians in danger. But the voice on the call It was human, rough, calm, familiar. "This is Guardian 7, the voice said. "Requesting evac for wounded, raiders neutralized." Lily's heart skipped. She turned to her crew. "Get me there now, in that system, on a scarred planet torn by fire and greed." One man stood between a pirate fleet and a broken colony. His armor was old, his weapon handmade, but his eyes still burned with the same fire he once carried into the Yulari jungle. David, still fighting, still protecting, still human, when the Yulari fleet arrived. The pirates fled without a fight. Their scanners had picked up the Mark Yulari dreadnoughts, and one battle queen aboard. David watched as the flagship landed. The doors opened, and Lily stepped down, older, stronger, and glowing with command. He smiled. "Took you long enough," she smirked. "You didn't water the tree properly." They stood there in silence for a second. 2 leaders, 2 survivors, no words needed. She handed him a badge silver with a star carved into its center. "What's this?" he asked. "Your official title," she said. "Guardian of the Union." He took it, pinned it to his chest. "Do I get a ship too?" Lily nodded. "You get a fleet." Together they returned to the stars, not as protector and protected, but as allies, as family, as proof that even the smallest lives can shape the largest stories. And in the corners of space, where silence once ruled, whispers began to spread again, of a soldier who bled for the weak, of a chief who ruled with both heart and fire, of a tree that bloomed on a dead moon, and of a promise that crossed galaxies. The universe would never forget. The Guardian had returned.